Hey guys, today's video is going to be the next part in my little DBT mindfulness series that I'm doing, which is part of my larger DBT skills video series that I'm doing. So in the last video, I talked about what mindfulness is, which basically is just being aware of what is going on in the present moment around you. And it's something that can be practiced anywhere while doing anything. And in that last video, we also talked about the what skills, which are what you should be doing to practice mindfulness. And those skills were observe, describe, and participate. So if you missed that video, I will link it at the end of this one. It's kind of fine to watch them in any order because all the skills work really well together and you generally learn them all together at once anyways in a DBT program. But today we're going to be going over the how skills. These are 3 skills and they are non-judgmentally, one mindfully, and effectively. So we will get more into that now. So our first one, non-judgmentally, is pretty much exactly how it sounds. Basically, you want to be not judging things while you are practicing mindfulness. This one is really hard for me. I judge myself, my thoughts, kind of all that stuff really, really harshly. And when you're always judging, it can make you feel really terrible. So we try to practice mindfulness while not being judgmental of what we are observing. So the way this is kind of talked about is you don't want to evaluate things as good or bad. You just want to look at the facts of the situation and what's going on. You can acknowledge the differences between helpful and harmful, but you're not judging them. And you can also acknowledge your values and emotions, but not judging them. And then you're going to end up judging because that's just how people are. Everyone is pretty much wired to judge things. So you're never going to be able to just completely not judge things. But when you do judge and you find yourself judging, that's when you can kind of allow yourself to notice that you're judging, but not judge your judging, which sounds like kind of weird. But it is helpful because I feel like when I find myself judging, that I'm like, oh no, I'm supposed to be practicing not judgmentally right now. And then I'm like judging myself for judging. And then I just get further and further in that hole. And then I'm not doing mindfulness at all because I'm too busy thinking about how I'm doing it wrong. So this one is definitely one of the most difficult ones for me. So one mindfully also is pretty much exactly how it sounds. You want to do things one thing at a time. So you want to be with that one moment and be completely present with it. You can notice your mind wandering. Again, just like judging, you're never going to be able to stay completely focused on one thing all the time. That's not really how our brains work, especially, now. There's always distractions, always things going on. But when you find yourself starting to do other things or wanting to be half present or wanting to multitask, then you can bring yourself back into whatever mindfulness you're doing and think about practicing one mindfully and just gently bringing yourself back. Usually you're going to have to keep repeating this bringing yourself back because, again, we're kind of wired to multitask. So we're going to get distracted a lot. So there might be a lot of times that you need to bring yourself back into the moment. For me, the example that I think of when I think about practicing one mindfully is when I take my dog on a walk. A lot of the times before, when I would take my dog on a walk, I would listen to music, I would listen to a podcast, which they're not bad things to do. But in thinking about ways that I could practice being more one mindful, I decided to not listen to music or a podcast while I was walking. I tried to just think about walking with my dog, think about my surroundings, think about my dog, just kind of what we're doing, the different body sensations from walking, things like that, just to keep myself present. And I found that this also helped me not worry as much because I was also using walks as my way to worry about things. So I would be out walking and doing something good for me, but the entire time in the back of my mind, I'm like worrying about what I'm doing later that night or tomorrow or thinking about past trauma. I'm like kind of all over the place. So being one mindful in thinking about taking my dog for a walk has been something that's really helpful for me. So our last skill is effectively. So this is where you want to remember your goals in the situation. You want to focus on what works for you, and you want to act skillfully for the situation that you're in, not the situation that you wish you were in. This one I have a hard time with as well because I get mad that I'm in whatever situation I'm in and I don't want to be in it, so I don't want to be skillful, and I end up just making it worse for myself, which is kind of where the last piece of the effectively skill is, which is to let go of willfulness. Willfulness wasn't a word that I knew before I started DBT, but basically it's the desire to not act skillfully when you know that you should. Now we're going to go through examples of kind of how you can practice each of these. So to practice non-judgmentally, this is one I kind of mentioned when we were going over it initially, but I'll just say it again, is to just label your judgmental thoughts as you notice them. A lot of the times we're judging things and we're not fully realizing it. And if you can start to label and know when you're judging things, that'll help you be able to improve on being less judgmental in the future. The other example, and this is one that I have found extremely helpful, is like I would think about a situation that I was in where I knew I was having a lot of judgments about how I acted in the situation, how the other people acted, all that stuff. And you write that out completely. And then you rewrite it using just the facts and you take out all of the judgments that are in there. And within that, you also include your emotions that you feel because the way that you felt in the situation was a fact of the situation. So that's not a judgment. It's just kind of how it happened. So again, you just rewrite that situation completely, but just the facts, no judgments, know what you were thinking that the other person was thinking about you, know how poorly you handled it, that kind of thing. And it really helps you notice how much you're judging either yourself and or other people in situations. When I did it, I was like really surprised how long it was when I first wrote out the entire situation versus how short it was when I listed just the facts. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm actually making a lot of judgments about this situation. So, a way to practice one mindfully, like I said, you could do the thing about going on a walk and you think about everything that you can observe through your five senses while you're on the walk. Another one that I really like that is in the DBT handbook is practicing one mindfully while making a cup of tea or coffee, or any warm beverage, I guess. Probably doesn't have to be warm either, but basically you make yourself tea or coffee and you try to stay present with that the entire time. And again, your mind is going to wander, and as it does, you bring it back to the tea or the coffee that you're making. And as you're doing this, you think about everything that you can observe through your five senses. So the smell of the tea or the coffee, the taste, the warmth, all of that stuff, and just keep yourself present with it. So the way to practice effectively is kind of, there's not really like a ton of ways to really practice it. Um, so I'm just going to give kind of my personal example of how I've practiced effectively. And this is basically noticing when you want to be willful and asking yourself, is this effective? So basically noticing when you don't want to be skillful and you'd rather engage in a different ineffective behavior, and kind of reminding yourself that what you're doing is ineffective in that moment. So for me, the example that I would use is self-harm. So a lot of the times I feel very strong urges to self-harm. And so the way for me to practice effectively is I would notice this urge to self-harm, and then I would ask myself, is engaging in self-harm an effective choice? And it's not. It's not an effective choice. It's never going to be an effective choice. Sometimes I still do. Sometimes I'm able to not. And that's just kind of the way it works. So it kind of varies situation by situation. But that's kind of the main way to practice it, is to just think about the times that you want to be ineffective and really think about, is acting ineffectively going to make this better or worse? Because if you act ineffectively, you're generally going to make things worse and harder for yourself. So just starting to train your brain to think in terms of effectively can start to help with that. So that is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if anything was unclear, please feel free to leave questions or comments down in the comments. I love reading what you guys have to say, and I can answer any questions to the best of my abilities. And I will probably make another couple videos on mindfulness because there is a lot to mindfulness and it is very, very important to DBT. And it's a huge help if you can build up a mindfulness practice. It's definitely difficult and a lot of work, but it's rewarding and it can be extremely beneficial. And I will link at the end of this video my other 2 mindfulness videos that I already have, so if you haven't already, please check those out. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.